All right, so today we are going deep on some cloud security concepts
Yeah,
that are really important for your CCSP exam prep.
absolutely. And I think what's really fascinating about this field is
Yeah.
it's not just memorizing definitions.
Yeah.
It's about really understanding these concepts like in the real world.
Yeah.
How do they actually work?
Yeah.
And how do they fit together to form like a robust security strategy?
Yeah.
I think that's what's going to set you apart on exam day.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. So let's start with security baselines.
Okay.
Now, I know you might think of these as like just a basic checklist,
Right.
but there's so much more than that.
Yeah.
Think of a security baseline as like the bedrock of your entire cloud environment.
Yeah.
It's that non-negotiable minimum security posture that
Yeah.
needs to be on every device in your organization.
Yeah, and what's interesting about baselines is often they go beyond just like technical configurations. They
Yeah.
might include policies and procedures, even training requirements.
Right.
So it's really about creating a culture of security from the ground up.
Right. So let's say like you're working in like a healthcare organization
Yeah.
and you have patient records that are like really sensitive.
Right.
You don't want to have a weak baseline that's going to leave those vulnerable to a breach.
Exactly. And that's where customization comes in.
Right.
You might need to implement like stricter access controls,
Right.
encryption protocols, multi-factor authentication to meet those specific regulatory requirements.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can get pretty intense depending on the data you're protecting.
But how do you even know where to start when you're building these baselines? Like, it can be pretty overwhelming if you have a really complex cloud environment.
That's where leveraging industry standards comes in.
Right.
Think of these as like pre-built blueprints.
Yeah.
They've been created by experts who've already done the heavy lifting
Hmm.
and identified best practices based on years of experience and research.
Right.
So it saves you a ton of time and effort.
Mhm. So instead of starting from scratch, you can leverage these proven frameworks.
Exactly.
It's like having a security recipe book right at your fingertips.
That's a great analogy.
And I know some people might be thinking, why not just rely on like the standards provided by your cloud vendor?
Right.
And those are a good starting point. But it's important to remember that they might not always be entirely objective.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're selling you their services.
Yeah.
So, it's crucial to also consult independent organizations like NIST, who offer kind of unbiased guidance and recommendations.
Right.
You want to get that well-rounded perspective.
Okay. So we have our baselines in place.
Mm-hmm.
We are leveraging these industry standards.
Yes,
But we can't just take like a cookie cutter approach.
exactly.
We need to tailor those standards to meet our specific needs.
Yeah, it's like buying a suit off the rack.
Right.
It might fit okay, but
Yeah.
getting it tailored to your specific measurements is going to make a world of difference.
Right.
And this is especially important when it comes to compliance. Yeah.
So let's say, for example, an industry standard recommends encrypting sensitive data,
Yeah.
but it doesn't specify the encryption key length.
Right.
Your organization might have compliance requirements that mandate a minimum 256-bit key.
Right.
So you need to carefully analyze those requirements and adjust your security configurations accordingly.
Yeah.
And don't forget about documentation.
Oh, right.
Every time you deviate from an industry standard, make sure you clearly document those changes and the reasoning behind them.
It's like leaving breadcrumbs
Exactly.
so that anyone who comes along later can understand why you made the decisions that you made.
Exactly.
Okay. Now let's talk about host availability.
Okay.
Think of this as the lifeblood of your cloud environment. If your hosts are down, your applications are down. And that's bad news.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And in a virtualized environment, it gets even more complex.
Right.
We're not just talking about keeping individual servers running.
Mm-hmm.
It's about ensuring the resilience of the entire virtual infrastructure. It's like a delicate ecosystem.
Yes.
Where all the components are interconnected.
Right.
And one failure can kind of have this ripple effect throughout the entire system.
Exactly. And that's why clustered hosts are so crucial.
Right.
It's all about distributing resources and workloads across multiple hosts.
Right.
So that if one fails, the others can pick up the slack.
It's like having a backup generator
Exactly.
to your house.
Exactly.
So if the power goes out, you're not sitting in the dark.
Yep.
I can see why that's going to be a key concept for the CCSP exam.
What are some other technologies or strategies that can enhance host availability?
Well, one that comes to mind is VMware's Distributed Resource Scheduling, or DRS.
Okay.
This is a really incredible technology
Yeah.
that dynamically optimizes resource allocation across your cluster.
Okay.
And it ensures that each virtual machine gets the resources it needs when it needs them.
So it's kind of like having this intelligent traffic cop
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
who is directing traffic based on real-time conditions.
So DRS is constantly monitoring resource utilization across all your hosts.
Yes.
And then it can just automatically migrate virtual machines to different hosts as needed,
Right.
just to prevent bottlenecks and ensure smooth operation.
Yeah.
So it's all about proactively balancing the load
Yes.
and preventing those single points of failure.
Exactly. And that's a key theme you'll see throughout your CCSP studies.
Yeah.
It's about building systems that can withstand disruptions and continue operating smoothly, even in the face of unexpected challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's really the goal here, is to create systems that are just resilient and can handle anything that comes their way.
Okay.
So,
That makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a good place to stop for now.
Yeah, I think so too.
We've covered a lot of ground already,
We have.
and we'll pick up where we left off in our next deep dive.
Sounds good.
So until then, keep studying and stay secure.
Absolutely. And speaking of proactive measures, right, we
Yeah.
can't forget about monitoring.
Right.
Monitoring is like your early warning system. Yeah. It's like having a team of security analysts just watching your systems around the clock, looking for any signs of trouble.
That makes sense. You don't want to wait until like a system crashes
Right.
before you realize there's a problem.
Exactly. And in the cloud, with so many moving parts and dynamic workloads, effective monitoring is just essential.
Right.
We're not just talking about checking if a server is up or down.
Right.
It's about analyzing logs, tracking resource utilization,
Right.
looking for patterns that might indicate a security incident or a potential performance bottleneck.
So it's really more than just a reactive approach.
Yes.
It's about proactively anticipating those issues before they impact your users.
Absolutely. Now let's delve a little deeper into some specific technologies
Okay.
you'll likely encounter in your CCSP studies.
Okay.
When it comes to security baselines,
Yeah.
you'll often hear about CIS benchmarks or DISA STIGs.
Okay.
These are essentially pre-configured sets of security settings that have been vetted by industry experts
Right.
and considered best practices.
Okay. So if I'm understanding this correctly, instead of having to reinvent the wheel and figure out all these optimal security settings myself,
Right.
I can leverage these benchmarks as a starting point.
Precisely, think of them as security cheat sheets
Okay.
created by the gurus themselves.
Yeah.
They've done the hard work of figuring out the most secure configurations for various systems and applications,
Right.
so you don't have to...
That's a huge time saver,
It is.
especially when you're studying for an exam like the CCSP. Are these benchmarks updated regularly?
Absolutely. The threat landscape is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
So these benchmarks are continuously updated to reflect the latest vulnerabilities and attack vectors.
Right.
It's like having a security subscription service
Okay.
that delivers the latest and greatest security settings right to your doorstep.
I like that. So we've talked about leveraging industry standards, customizing them to meet our needs, using benchmarks as a starting point for our security configurations.
Right.
But what happens if, despite all of our best efforts, a disaster strikes?
That's where disaster recovery planning comes in. It's all about being prepared for the worst case scenario.
Right.
Imagine a fire breaks out in your primary data center.
Right.
What's your plan?
Right.
How do you ensure business continuity?
Yeah, that's a scary thought. I guess I would want to have a backup data center ready to go
Right.
so I could quickly switch over my operations without losing any data.
Exactly. And that's just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
A comprehensive disaster recovery plan should include things like regular data backups, a clear communication plan,
Right.
a designated recovery site,
Right.
and a well-defined recovery process.
So it's almost like having a fire drill for your IT systems.
Exactly.
You need to practice your recovery plan regularly
Yes.
to ensure that it works when you need it most.
And don't forget about testing those backups.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You don't want to find out during a disaster that your backups are corrupted or inaccessible.
Yeah.
That would be like trying to escape a burning building and realizing the fire escape is blocked.
Right. Yeah, not good. Okay, so disaster recovery is all about planning for the unexpected.
Yes.
But what about those day-to-day security threats that we're constantly hearing about in the news?
Right.
How do we protect ourselves from those?
That's where security monitoring comes into play.
Okay.
It's like having a security guard patrolling your premises 24/7,
All right.
looking for any signs of suspicious activity.
So instead of waiting for an attack to happen, we're actively looking for threats in real time.
Precisely. And a good security monitoring system should be able to detect and respond to threats quickly and effectively.
Right.
You don't want to wait until the thieves have already made off with your valuables to start investigating.
Right. What kind of tools are used for security monitoring?
There's a whole arsenal of
Yeah.
security weapons at your disposal. Intrusion detection systems, or IDS, can alert you to suspicious network traffic,
Okay.
while security information and event management systems, or SIMs,
Right.
can correlate data from multiple sources to identify potential attacks.
Okay.
Log analysis tools can help you find needles in the haystack of your system logs, and threat intelligence feeds can provide you with up-to-date information on the latest threats.
Wow, that's a lot to keep track of. It sounds like you need a whole team of security experts just to manage all of that.
Well, while having a dedicated security team is certainly beneficial,
Right.
it's also crucial to empower everyone in your organization to be security conscious.
Right.
From the CEO to the intern, everyone needs to understand the importance of security and follow plum practices.
Right.
It's like a neighborhood watch program
Yes.
where everyone is on the lookout for suspicious activity
Right.
and reports it immediately.
Okay, so security is everyone's responsibility,
Yes.
not just the IT departments. But what happens if, despite all our best efforts, a security incident does occur?
That's where incident response comes in.
Right.
It's like the fire department responding to a fire.
Okay.
You need a clear plan of action to contain the damage, investigate the cause of the incident,
Right.
restore affected systems, and learn from the incident to improve your security posture.
So it sounds like incident response requires a cool head and a systematic approach.
Absolutely. You don't want to be scrambling to figure out what to do in the middle of a crisis.
Right.
That would be like trying to put out a fire with a garden hose.
Right.
You need a well-defined incident response plan in place, and you need to practice it regularly to ensure that your team knows exactly what to do when the time comes.
Okay, so we've talked about disaster recovery and incident response, which are like those oh no moments.
Right.
But what about the bigger picture?
Yeah.
How do we build like a culture of security that prevents those incidents from happening in the first place?
That's where continuous improvement comes in. Okay. Security is not a one-and-done deal.
Right.
It's a journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You need to constantly be evaluating your security posture, identifying weaknesses, and implementing new measures to stay ahead of the curve.
So it's like staying in shape. You can't just hit the gym once and expect to be fit forever.
Exactly. You need to make security an integral part of your organization's DNA.
Right.
That means staying up to date on the latest threats and vulnerabilities, adopting new security technologies,
Right.
training your staff on best practices,
Right.
and conducting regular security audits.
Sounds like a lot of work.
It is, but the payoff is worth it.
Right.
Think of it this way. The cost of preventing a security breach is always going to be less than the cost of dealing with the aftermath.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's not just financial cost.
Right.
We're talking about reputational damage, loss of customer trust, and potential legal liabilities.
So it's a big deal.
Is.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We talked about baselines, standards, post availability, disaster recovery, incident response, continuous improvement. It's like building this fortress layer upon layer of security.
And remember, as technology continues to evolve at a breakneck pace, so do the threats.
Right.
So it's essential to stay agile and adapt your security measures accordingly. It's like playing a game of chess.
Yeah.
You need to anticipate your opponent's moves and be ready to adjust your strategy.
So if I'm prepping for that CCSP exam, what are some key takeaways that I should keep in mind?
First and foremost, understand the foundational concepts.
Okay.
What are security baselines?
Go for it.
Why are industry standards important?
Right.
How do you customize those standards to meet your specific needs?
Got it. Master the fundamentals.
Secondly, delve into the technologies and techniques that are commonly used in cloud security.
Okay.
Things like encryption firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and security information and event management systems, or SIMs.
Okay, so get hands-on and understand how those tools work in practice.
Exactly. And finally, remember that security is not just about technology. It's about people, processes, and culture. Foster a culture of security awareness within your organization.
Yeah.
Empower your staff to be proactive.
Right.
And make security an integral part of your decision-making process.
Well, it's a holistic approach.
It's about
more than just checking boxes.
It is. It's about protecting your organization's most valuable assets, its data, and its reputation.
Right.
And in today's digital world, that's more important than ever.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive. I feel like I've gained a much deeper understanding of the key concepts and challenges involved in cloud security.
I'm glad to hear that. And remember, this is just the beginning of your journey.
Yeah.
The world of cloud security is constantly evolving, so stay curious, keep learning, and never underestimate the importance of protecting your digital crown jewels.
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. I hope you found this exploration of practical security concepts helpful and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Remember, the CCSP exam is challenging, but with the right knowledge and preparation, you can conquer it. Good luck on your journey to becoming a certified cloud security professional.